Hey guys, good morning and welcome to episode 55 of the At the Coffee Table podcast. It kind of blows me away that I've done 55 of these. But anyways, I am Jason Klink, and today I am joined by Lindsay Mastrogiovanni, who is the CEO and founder of Blue Moon Growth Company. And Lindsay and I wanted to create this co-content, so to say, to talk about podcasting, what went into each other's podcasts, where it got derived from, some of the struggles, so to say, some of the successes, and where podcasting plays an important role these days when it comes to social media and social media marketing. So, Lindsay, thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you a little bit into your background, a little bit about your business and.
Sure, I'm losing you a little bit, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to catch up on what you're saying. So I'm Lindsay Mastrogiovanni, Linds for short. It's like the longest name on planet Earth, and I'm the simplest person, so a little bit of a conundrum there.
And it ends in a vowel.
Yeah. So yeah, Linds is what I usually go by, what people say. So I am CEO of Blue Moon Growth Co. I started the business actually just a few months ago, but it's really a coaching business, a business consulting business with a little bit of a witchy twist or a spiritual twist, whichever word you prefer. My background is in human resources and learning development and business consulting and learning and development, really. And I am also a psychic intuitive for my lifetime, and started reading tarot about a year ago, and spent a long time trying to figure out kind of who I was and how to bring those very two different pieces of my life together. So that's kind of the aim of the business, is to help others do the same. Career professionals who also have the spiritual side, who really want to be able to become their whole person to be an effective professional and help develop their own business or their own companies or the community that they're in. So that's kind of the aim of what I do and why I do it. And then from there, it's really just finding the right people to bring along on the journey with me. So that's kind of what I got going on.
So you and I had a previous discussion before recording the podcast, and you had talked about how you had worked regular jobs, the regular 9-to-5, and decided to create your own company because you wanted, I think if I remember right, you just wanted, there was something else to it that excited you about bringing what you've been doing as a career and putting it together with the passion that you have in the other aspects of your business. And I find that super important, because if you don't have that drive, that enthusiasm, that passion to do things, the typical career 9-to-5 Monday through Friday can get pretty mundane. And I always joke, I kind of joke around with, there's a generation of people that they went to school, they maybe went to college, they got done with college, they got a 9-to-5, they worked 30 years and then retired and waited to die. And then that's not the best way. To me, that's kind of unfulfilling. So
and you lose yourself in the process.
Right. And have you found that upswing, that kind of riding that high of, wow, I'm really creating this now, and I've created my own business, and I'm starting to make contacts, and now I have some clients. Have you found that excitement, that momentum building?
Yeah, for sure. I think with anything, there's that, it's a business cycle, but I think of it more, ebbs and flows and kind of like a wave. So, there's that excitement, it builds. And for me, the excitement really comes in the development, and that's where my passion comes in, right? It's like I'm creating these things, I'm going to make a big difference. And then you got to find people, and then you find the same, similar minded people, and you're kind of like at this high, and then you get there, and then you're doing the work, and you start to second guess yourself a little bit. And you're like, that imposter syndrome kicks in, and you're like, am I really supposed to be doing this? Like, I don't know if I have it in me. Like, I think I have it in me, but I don't really know.
Right.
And as soon as you kind of start thinking about it, is when it starts going down a little bit. So I think the secret is to, you have to be strategic, and you have to know like what's going to work as far as a business is concerned. And that's where, coaches like us come in to help with that piece. But from the internal piece and the second guessing and understanding your knowledge, I think the secret is really to just go for it, not second guess what you're doing with yourself and your brain. And those are going to be the successful people, the people who just sit like, do whatever it takes. And I hate that, like, cliche. You got to do whatever it takes. You got to do whatever nobody else is going to do. But it's just getting past that little inside voice that's like nagging and annoying.
Well, I mean, you really have a point there of where you said you're doing what nobody else is doing, but these spaces are so crowded, especially coaching or business development. Sure. So crowded. Yeah. And if you're not creating something that kind of helps you stand outside the crowd, stand in front of the crowd, with like your business model, or doing a podcast as an addition to any business stuff that you're doing, you could, if you're like a new entrepreneur or a new business owner, you could easily get in your own head and get, feel like you're getting lost in the crowd and not getting any traction.
Yeah. It's especially with podcasting, like in coaching in general, it is so crowded. You absolutely have to have a niche, and you have to have that passion that you were talking about. Like, you can't just have a lot of knowledge and jump into this and do it and be successful. You have to be passionate about what you're doing, and you have to find your group of people that understands you. And the way that you communicate doesn't have to be the same, but your audience needs to have that same understanding that you do and that same passion. And you need to be able to foster that. So with podcasting, it's the same thing. There's a million podcasts out there. The only way for somebody to understand who you are and what you do in the podcast is for you to connect it back to the business, and also be entertaining in whatever type of entertainment that makes sense for your business and your audience is where you got to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, so with the podcast, and I've talked about this before in other episodes, and you and I had talked about it. So the concept of my podcast was I spent decades in fire stations where we sat around the kitchen or the coffee table, and we'd have a couple of coffee, a couple, easy for me to say, a few cup of coffee,
too many coffees this morning.
Yeah, I need some more. And we'd be able to solve the world's problems within like an hour or two. And it's taking that. And when I started this, I didn't want to be so niche down that it kind of limited the guests that I've had. Because it's all about good conversation for me. And that's all it is. It's not scripted. It's not outlined. It's all about having good conversation. So I've had everywhere from personal trainers to health and nutrition to other business people to, colleagues in public safety, kind of the whole realm, business coaches. So have you found that for your podcast and what you are attempting to accomplish, can you have that wide stroke like that, or are you more of a narrower lane, so to say?
I'm kind of doing what you were just saying, where, my business does have this niche audience, but my podcast is more about general topics, and it's about that conversation. It's about growth or doing better for yourself. That way, I think that it helps grow your audience in your business, maybe reach out to those people outside of the circle that you think could. But really for me, it's fun. It's my podcast isn't to really talk about necessarily what goes on at Blue Moon Growth Co. Of course, some of the topics will be that, because that's what I do. But really the podcast is just with friends. It's with professionals. It's with, new people in the community, to really just have conversations about what's going on and what's important and how to be better as ourselves and is a community.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it all boils down to, I'm a big proponent of business to human, and humans just want to deal with humans and have that human interaction. And, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. If it wasn't for the pandemic lockdown, I may not have started this podcast, or at least I would have just dabbled in it and never really got going and had the drive to reach out to other people and
Mm-hmm.
ask them to be on the podcast. And it's one of those things where one event kind of spurred this whole thing, and now it's just fun for me.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about just the changes in general in people because of COVID. And
Mhm.
I think we were able to, before, when we were so, not before, like we aren't still busy, but pre-COVID, everybody kind of had their plan and their schedule, and we had to
Yeah.
get people's places and we had to go to this appointment, and it was so go, go, go that
Hmm.
we, all of a sudden when all that stopped, it all of a sudden you had a lot of time to think about you and
Right.
reflect
Right.
on kind of what's most important to you, what your passions
Yep.
are, and where to put that time. And
Right.
I think a lot of us found out that like human contact and having relationships is
Hmm.
very important. And
Right.
the relationship with yourself, I think it starts there with everything, but especially with this, there's just so much more time and space to identify who you are. And I
Right.
think if there was anything good that came out of COVID, that's it, right? It is the
Yeah.
human element.
Right. Right. And I think back to like 55 episodes, and the first few or first dozen were okay, maybe
Yeah.
not so good, and then it's just gotten a little easier since then. But I can't think of a one where the conversation just didn't flow along,
Hmm.
and you had the kind of an awkward thing where I had to pull the information out of the guest or something, or it got painful for whatever reason. It was just, and I've started them all for the most part all the same way, telling them, listen, I'm not going to script anything. There's been a
Hmm.
few where I wrote down some ideas that specific things I wanted to talk about. But all of them just, it was this, just that natural flow of conversation. And part of it for me is connecting with the right people and having
Hmm.
that connection anyways, personally. But the other part is just keeping it free flowing in order for people just kind of to talk about what passions they have. And for the people that I did have, conversations with, that you can see their body language, their facial expressions, their excitement change once they start talking about something that's passionate for them.
Yeah. And that's what's exciting to me. That's why I do what I do and what I have done in human resources and in any type of development
Mhm.
situation. It's the same that you hear from teachers, right? It's like you see that spark go off, and then that spark is passion. That's what it is.
Right.
And um way before I started the company in my full-time gig, I started to kind of work on branding. Personal branding's the big thing right
Right.
now. And
Right.
I've always been like, authenticity is a huge thing for me my whole life. Like I'm incapable of being not me, and that can be not a good thing sometimes.
Right. Right.
But it's just how I've always been. So that's been a driver for me in my career, is like, how can I be a professional but also be Lindsay? And
Right.
it's taken a long time to get there. So it's so important to have that, like, be able to pair up whatever your passion is. And it's really, it's not feasible to like have your dream job. Like it's just not. I mean, that's a very like pie in the sky thing to me, is like, oh, you should go find your dream job. Like, well, it's just not reality. Like, we all need to
Right.
work. We all need to support ourselves and our families. But what you
Right.
need to do is find a job where you can really use your talents and your passion in whatever that might be. And if you
Hmm.
can find a place to do that, you will be happy. It doesn't
Oh
have to
yeah.
be the crazy dream. It just has to be
Right.
something that allows you to use your creativity and your passion and whatever that might be.
So, like, and I was just thinking of just recently. So, my last podcast episode, I did it with a young lady that went from being an RN nurse to an ambassador for Plexus to
Mhm.
bodybuilding competitions, being a mom, being a wife,
All of the above, yeah.
and all of the above.
Many
And
titles.
you could just see when she got into what she's doing, how passionate, because she was nervous to start, because it was really her first podcast experience. And I was
Mhm.
privileged enough to be able to have her on, to be able to experience the podcast world. And, you could see that passion exuding and stuff. And one of the coolest things for me is it was the catalyst, from what I could tell, it was the catalyst for her and her husband to design, create, and set up a podcast for themselves. But I think their concept is just doing it as a couple, married couple, married life, so on and so on. And to be able to have that effect and to get more people interested is so super cool to me. Have you had any of those kind of experiences yet?
Not, I mean, I'm so new with my podcast and the business. I haven't, but, I'm still, like you said, I'm still my first few episodes trying to find my footing and like what,
Okay.
What do I want this to sound like?
Yep.
But I do have podcast experience even in my corporate life. And I mean, that's rare for that to happen, that we actually had the opportunity to do a podcast. I got to be the host of it. And I absolutely loved it. And one, you're already paired up with people who are like-minded because you're in the same career.
Sure.
But from a learning standpoint, which was really the goal of what we did, it was more of an educational career development opportunity. Just being able to have a conversation with professionals that are like-minded, that you're able to just kind of like banter with and speak about moving forward and like what's helpful and tools and resources, but also just be able to chat is really nice. And it's probably the biggest thing that I miss because of COVID, as we don't get to have kind of those more chatty conversations. It's all meetings now. So it's, a good thing I get to do that now in Blue Moon, but that's why we do it. I mean, this is a very, it depends on your own likes and what you're interested in. But when I listen to a podcast, it's always just chatting and conversations, and there's got to be some laughing and humor in there. I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan, so it's usually all comedians. But I don't want to just listen to one person talk and deliver information. Like if I want to hear that, I'll read it, I'll watch a video.
Sure.
But like a podcast with one, to me, it's just not it's not my fave. But I love listening to conversations and seeing where they go, and stories, like storytelling. That's how I learn, and that's how I laugh. And I'm usually learning when I'm laughing. So that's kind of what I aim to do and why I like the conversation.
One of my goals, I think I know one of the goals that I have is to get more than just me and someone else, to get 3 or 4 people on and have a conversation. I'm going to try to accomplish that in May, if not May, June, and get 3 or 4 and try that, because it's always been one-on-one or just me babbling. But I think back to one of my favorite podcasts that I consume is the Real AF with Andy Frisella and Sal Frisella. And they get a group of, they could be 4 or it could be 10. And they'll start talking about a subject and something they're passionate about, or their business or whatever. And all of a sudden they'll stop in the middle and start breaking each other's chops for the entertainment value. But it's not planned. It's just they hit something, they start breaking each other's chops, and they move on and they continue on with the podcast. And that's one of those things that one of the goals that I have for mine is to get it a little bit bigger, to add more guests at one time, and to facilitate those longer but fun conversations, so to say. What are your ultimate goals for your podcast? You're just starting out, you're getting some guests, you're lining up some appointments. What are the goals for your podcast moving forward through the rest of the year?
I'd like to get to a point where it's just I don't know, my episodes so far are just conversations, but they're kind of like, here's a topic, let's talk about it. And I'd like to get to a point where I have like a somewhat consistent group of people, even if it is one-on-one or 3 of us. I'd like to have a group of people where we just chat, like, what's going on today? What happened yesterday? What's going on with your kids? I'd kind of like to have that as a base. One, because it can be very difficult to find guest after guest after guest after guest, get them scheduled all together. God, let's hope that there's no technology issues or something like that. And you want to be able to get out consistent episodes, because you can't decide, okay, I'm going to do 1 a month and then skip 3 months. So, or
Right.
I'm going to do once a week. Oh God, I don't even think I can commit to once a week. I don't know how you do it, but um, but you have to be able to be realistic and see, how am I going to scale this? Do I want to scale it, and in what direction? And for me, my plan is to be able to build up that consistent base of people where it's like, this is what you can expect. And then it'll be peppered in with some topical knowledge in those types of conversations. And I think that's what helps draw in your audience too. If they know you,
Right.
they don't care what you're talking about. They just want to listen to you talk. So
Right.
that's kind of that's where I want to go. And because again, it's fun for me. And like, even if nobody
Right.
talks, it's really just me hanging out with my friends. So, which is always good.
And that's great. And one of the cool things and little tip that you had given me when we had talked prior to recording this was doing 3 or 4 podcasts in a row and then releasing them weekly or whatever the
Over
time frame
time.
may be. And that way you're not, like I do, trying to schedule it once a week. But you do 3 or 4 of them, and then you can. And I thought, I'm like, wow, that's genius. Why the heck didn't I think of that before? Take and do a couple in a day or whatever, and release it later on.
I got some good ideas sometimes. So I got some stuff going on up here.
Right. And we, every now and again, I come out of my senior fog and have a light bulb come on and have an idea or two. And I think that's you're right. I think that's the important part is sharing those ideas, masterminding. Because I'm a huge fan of masterminding and think tanks, so to say. So it's so important to have that. And I think regardless if it's 1 guest or 3 guests, you're going to get that. You're going to get a tidbit of information that makes you think, or something you didn't know before.
Yeah. That's the only way you learn, right? I mean,
right.
I keep hearing like, obviously I'm very into symbolism and signs and, just who I am and what I do. And lately that's been a large message to me, is about learning. And like, if you ever stop and think you know everything, that's when you stop learning about it. And especially like today's world, it changes every single day. If you think you're an expert, you're not. Like that's when it stops.
Right.
So, we can be very good. That's why, again, it comes back to passion. If you're passionate about something, you're always going to want to know more about it, understand it more, pay attention to the changes, especially with anything industry related and regulatory. There's always something new and a new way to adapt and a new way to handle it.
I mean, you're 100% right. This world is moving so fast, and we got information flying at us at milliseconds. It's always kind of refreshing to slow down and learn something, like you said.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's we'll get off the podcast thing and talk a little bit about your business, because I want to be able to highlight that. You have a very interesting business model. You're doing coaching mixed with, you were saying tarot and some spiritual stuff. How did you come about with that? How's that received? Do you get anybody going, well, it's just voodoo stuff kind of, or, whatever, whatever preconceptions they might have. Talk about your business model a little bit.
Sure. Well, me being psychic, intuitive, whatever you want to call it, I have trouble with labels in general my entire life, because I don't ever think anything is that simple. All I knew is that my entire life I could see things, I could hear things, I just knew things. I could tell you what was going to happen before it happened, but I didn't necessarily say like I'm psychic. I just knew that was my experience. And I battled with that for a very long time because, one, I was afraid of it. Was that an HHB glass? Was that house?
Yep.
Oh, boom. Love it.
I'm related to one of the owners.
Oh my gosh, you are? That's awesome.
My father-in-law is one of the 3 guys that started it.
Well, we'll have to talk more about that. If anybody wants to go to a really cool brewery / greenhouse, Hot House Brewing in Cicero, New York.
There you go. South Bain Thompson, check it out.
Nice little plug. Lindsay approved. So anyway, I knew what my reality was. Some people accepted it. In general, some people accept it, some people don't. I never believed that anybody else should believe what I believe in. I just kind of, that was my deal. And I pushed it away because I just didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to do what you're supposed to do. And, went to college and got a job and got married and had a kid. And like all of those things have worked out for me. And I'm very fortunate with everything I have. But I had this very large piece of my life. I just kind of like was like, don't want to deal with it. And whenever I did push it away, it got worse and worse and worse, and I had to deal with it. So it kind of came to a culmination in my life where I was like, I have to pay attention to this. It's me, it's who I am. And for somebody that is obsessed with authenticity, like how I'm being inauthentic by not acknowledging this piece. So I'm passionate about the career in the professional world and how to build yourself as a worker and as a benefit to the community. And I've worked with many small businesses as an HR consultant and found that my intuitive abilities really lent themselves to what I did to be able to help people identify what their skills are and give them the tools and resources to be able to be that effective person, business owner, whatever. So that's kind of where the idea came from. I'm like, there needs to be more of a focus in the business and the corporate world of how to use your inherent talents and maybe your own intuitiveness to be able to mirror that in your career, much like I did. And it took me way too long to get there. When we are our full selves, we are a better worker and a better contributor to society. So, and without having to say, I am Lindsay and I work for X company, you can just be Lindsay. Like you can be who you are and be a benefit because of that. So that's really where the business comes from. It's creating a space to help people be better for themselves as a professional, because there's a million life coaches out there, but not all of them have a background or an understanding in the career world and how to get to run a business if that's your goal, if you want to be a business owner. There's not a lot of those two very different aspects pulled together. So I wanted to create a space that people could come to do that. So whether that be through one-on-one coaching with me, whether it be through self-guided courses, which are things that I'm getting ready to push out here very soon, just through community. Like I have a Facebook group where I run a 4-day challenge, which is more focused on personal development. But I'm still developing a lot of that career-driven stuff as well. So it's really a safe space, I think, is what I call it, more than anything else. I mean, I offer a lot of different services and courses and products, but I want that community to be built where we can start pulling in those two different pieces. And it doesn't have to be weird and it doesn't have to be voodoo. And I talked about all this stuff and I really didn't answer your main question, which was like, what happened? And I was very surprised at what a reception I had. So like not a lot of people knew what my deal was, a very select few. And I told everybody I was coming out of the broom closet. And yeah, and I did when I announced, and that was very recent. I mean, other than just a select few people that have been in my life a very long time, including family who didn't know, a lot of friends that I had, like they had no idea this is what I did or what I was into or my experience. And I posted on Facebook, like, hey, this is kind of crazy and my hands are shaking, but I'm a psychic intuitive and you all know about my career and this is my new business. And I was prepared for like, people are going to delete me and they're going to think I'm crazy and they like, oh my God, she's so weird. And I mean, maybe they said that, but everybody was
that offline.
Yeah, maybe. But I was like, you know what? As soon as I said it, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I was so worried about caring. And then once I did it, I'm like, anybody who's going to react like that really isn't somebody I want in that circle anyway. So I had a very good reception to it. And now that I've put myself out there, that's really what's going to allow other people to put themselves into that safe space if they aren't able to do that with their family or their friends or their boss or their
Right.
profession, that's huge, right? Like in the workplace, how do I do it? So my tagline for Blue Moon Growth Co. is bringing woo woo to the workplace. So how can you practice those things and be, quote, normal? And it's very easy. It's actually easier than anyone thinks. It's not as scary as it is. And that's kind of the message that I want to bring.
So, I mean, I took away some really important parts of that. Was the important part of matching up your personal development with your professional development.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that was one of the lessons, most profound lessons I've learned in the last, 5 or 6 years, was matching those two up. Because if you're not taking care of the personal self, how can your business self or professional self be any good? And putting
Exactly.
those two together, like you said, I think is just one of the most important takeaways anybody could take out of that. And the other part was being authentic, being true to yourself, being who you are, because that's who you are. And, you may have unique qualities or unique gifts like you do. And there's just no reason to shy away from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where you embrace it, love it, live it, breathe it, and
Yep.
let it fly. And that's just my opinion on that. If you are that authentic with those certain gifts, just, man, use those gifts.
Mm-hmm. And use them in a way that's going to be helpful to you. And it doesn't have to be the
Right.
way that other people say it has to be. Like I read tarot, but I'm not out there advertising like, hey, I'm a tarot reader. It's part of what I do and it's part of my practice. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be the way that it's being told to you that it's done. Like make it work for
Right.
you. And
Yep.
that might mean it changes or it shifts, and that's okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
It's
business
definitely
too. Like
okay.
my model can change in a month. I don't know. Like it's just going to be what's going to work and what's going to be most beneficial for
Yep.
my people.
That's great. Yeah, it's, if you are trying to be your best self and raise your level to your best self, it's embracing every positive, negative quality that you have, every quirk,
Yes.
every stigma, whatever it might be, because the worst things, I think one of the more profound things I've learned is, to get to the end of your life, or to be an elderly person and have a life full of regret. That's pretty disturbing. And
Hmm.
if you have regrets, man, it's never too late to kind of act on your passion and act on your, act on your interests and stuff, so you can remove those regrets and you don't have them at the end of life.
Yeah. It it is disturbing to me. It's like that's what I fear, right? Is not being able to do what I want when the best time to do it, when we don't have these other obligations. And you said something
Right.
really important there, the positive and the negative. Um yeah, my episode that I'm getting ready to release here was on toxic positivity and
Hmm.
how we really need to focus on both sides of things to be able to understand our true selves. And it's shadow work. I mean, and that's a large portion of what I do in my business because I don't think there's enough focus on that. What is the negative
Right.
and how can you change it, make it better, understand it? And it might always be a
Yeah.
part of you, and that's okay because it makes you you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really fantastic. Um, Lindsay, I appreciate you joining me on the show today. I think I see great things for your future with your business, and I'm looking forward to returning the favor and jumping on your podcast here in the near future. And hopefully, I can bring some value to the listeners that you have. What is the
For
best
sure.
way for people to connect with you, either online, offline, or in between?
Sure. You can find me at bluemoongrowthco.com. I'm on Facebook, Blue Moon Growth Co. I'm on Instagram, if I can say it correctly.
There you go.
Blue Moon Growth Co. Any of those social. I'm even on TikTok, but only like this bit. So
I,
I will
I was
probably
just
view you on TikTok before you
uh,
see my
uh,
videos. But
I was just going back and forth this week about TikTok, and the social media gurus are promoting. You got to be on TikTok. You want to promote your business, got to be on TikTok. I just don't think I'm that entertaining, and nor can I dance to be able to be on TikTok.
It's a lot of time to put together like
Yeah,
good ones. And if I'm just chatting, I'd rather just do a quick live or something. But every once in a
right.
while, I'll do like a fun thing, and it's more of
Yeah.
like that. TikTok's more of like where my funny. I'm actually kind of a funny person, but that's where most of my fun comes out is on there. But I've only done a couple videos. If you find my personal one, you'll find
Okay.
more entertaining ones.
There, there you go. That's awesome. Well, that sounds like a great place to end it too.
Yeah.
You know, so you guys, hey, I appreciate Lindsay's time and for her joining me here today. We'd love to hear your comments on what you thought of today's podcast. So please leave a comment, share it with anyone that you might think would need to or would like to connect with Lindsay and her business model. And I'm looking forward to jumping on her podcast here in the near future. So with that, Lindsay, thank you again. Everybody, again, drop those comments. We need some interaction here. So with that, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of
Thanks
each
so much.
other, and have a
It's been
great day.
awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.